Hello, I'm Nito Cobain. Welcome to Side by Side. My guest today struggled as a child with illiteracy and a stutter. Through his strong sense of faith and hard work, he overcame those challenges to become a multiple Emmy Award-winning journalist, covering events that include 9/11 and the Boston Marathon bombing, to name just a few. We've watched him on 60 Minutes, and today he's the co-anchor of ABC News Nightline. We're talking with Byron Pitts.
Funding for Side by Side with Nito Cobain is made possible by...
Here's to those that rise and shine, to friendly faces doing more than their part, and to those who still enjoy the little things. You make it feel like home. Ashley Home Store. This is home.
The Bud Group is a company of everyday leaders making a difference by providing facility solutions through customized janitorial, landscape, and maintenance services.
Coca-Cola Consolidated is honored to make and serve 300 brands and flavors locally. Thanks to our teammates. We are Coca-Cola Consolidated, your local bottler.
Byron, welcome to Side by Side. I have been watching you in television for many years. You are a master of your trade. You have multiple Emmys. You are the co-anchor of ABC News Nightline. You have done many specials. You are the senior national correspondent. But you started your television career in the Tar Heel State.
I did in Greenville, North Carolina, which means a number of things. One, I know my way around a barbecue sandwich, being in Eastern North Carolina. And it was a wonderful experience. Greenville, as you know, is a wonderful community. My family's from North Carolina, actually. My mother was born, raised, and she's buried in a family plot in Apex, North Carolina. So this state has always been a great deal to me and to my family.
So you began doing what? What station was it, and what did you do?
Sure, I worked at WNCT TV in Greenville, North Carolina. And I was a general assignment reporter. That means every car accident, rainstorm, I covered. The big story was the annual Fluker Tobacco Festival. Covered that with great pride.
Yes.
And I was very briefly, and I mean briefly, I had a cup of coffee as the weekend sports anchor. I thought, because I played collegiate football, I thought I could be a sports anchor. We all quickly discovered that wasn't my gifting. I remember one of the first nights on the air, weekend sports, I was doing high school scores, high school football, which is big across the country, particularly big here in North Carolina. And so I had left my script back on my desk. So I go to the anchor set without a script, no teleprompter. And I thought, I can just fake it. I know enough about high school football. And so I say, there was a high school had like Garner Webb. It was a high school with a hyphenated name. And in my nervousness, I said, Garner beat Webb. And the photographer shook his head. Oh, I'm sorry. Breaking news: Webb beat Gardner. He threw up his hands. I didn't last very long.
You messed up pretty badly.
I did. I was awful.
You went to Ohio Wesleyan University
Yes.
for college, a very fine institution. Did you play football there?
I did. I played football. I wrestled, but I played football there all 4 years. It was a great school. One of the reasons why I went there, my mother, Clarice Pitts is her name. God called her home about 10 years ago. Woman of deep faith. Next to the Bible, her favorite book was The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And once Mama found out that Dr. Peale had gone to Ohio Wesleyan, she was done, which meant I was done.
Yes. Yeah. Byron, you probably don't know this, but I wrote my first book in 1983, and Norman Vincent Peale was at the zenith of his career, and I asked him to write the foreword to my book. I was a kid.
Yeah.
And he wrote me back and he said, "That's orders from headquarters. Of course I will." And wrote the most beautiful foreword. It impacted me measurably that a man of that stature would get out of his comfort zone to do something for a kid in his first book.
Wow.
And then we became very good friends thereafter. He lived to be 100, as you know, and passed away on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Amazing story.
Which speaks to, I think, certainly his character, but as you know, part of being dynamic, part of being a leader is being a servant, being gracious, being a giver as opposed to a taker.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you speak of your mom a lot.
Yeah.
You speak of your mom's impact
Yes.
in your life. She lived in North Carolina. She was buried in North Carolina. What exactly did your mom do that impacted your life in such a measurable way?
In a word, everything. This is the woman who gave me life. This is the woman who directed my life. My mother was my biggest fan and my biggest critic. What I loved about her is that she could be, my mother was old school. There were two rules in her house. Rule number one, she makes them. Rule number two, you follow them. There was no three,
This
four.
is it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. And so she was incredibly demanding, but she was also equally loving and supportive. As I said, I played football. My mother went to every football game I ever played in. Even when I went to college, she would save up money to come to at least 2 games of mine a year. I remember my mother had major surgery when I was in high school, and she scheduled the surgery as early in the week as possible in hopes that she could make it to my game. Well, by that Friday night, she still wasn't able to make the game. So she told my brother, my older brother, Mac, she said, Mac, come to the hospital. And my brother snuck her out of the hospital in the rain, in a big trench coat, and brought her to my game. And so there's a spot she would always stand. I would look there, and there she was.
Wow.
Now, mind you, I was a freshman. I wasn't going to play. I knew and she knew I wasn't going to play. But it was important for her to be present. So she was always present in my life. She, a woman of deep faith. I remember, one of my professional goals early on was to work for 60 Minutes for CBS. And I remember on my 18th birthday, my mother and I prayed for that. Because in my faith tradition, say it, claim it. And so my mother believed that if we say it out loud, if we ask our Lord and Savior this, and you do your work, right? As you know, the African proverb, when you pray, move your feet. That, son, if you do your part, our God will do his part. And so it was that optimistic spirit that she gave me. I wear her cross now that I took off of her neck before she took her last breath. And yeah, she guided me all of my life when she was alive, and she remains my North Star in many ways.
What a legacy.
Yeah.
What impact.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Great lady.
Tell us about the one time that you were on an assignment and you botched it up. You talked about the sports thing, but in terms of news.
Oh, sure. Well, how much time
Botched
do
it
we
up
have?
and your boss called you in and
sure.
read you the book and you were scared to death.
Oh, sure. Well, that happened a couple of times. I'll give you 2 quick examples, if I may. One was I was covering the Florida recount when I was at CBS News between
George
Vice
Bush.
President, yes, Al Gore. And it was going back and forth. And so as it turns out, because I was assigned to cover what we thought would be a brief story, ended up being a huge story for a number of days. I was a lead story in this very historic event.
And you were covering that for NBC,
CBS News.
For CBS News. Yes.
CBS News with Dan Rather. And as you know, along with a stutter, I didn't learn to read until I was almost 13 years old. So I'm a slow reader still. Like I have to start early, stay late. And so anyway, I would rather be in the midst of gunfire than to have to be given some information to read live on the air. It causes me some anxiety. Anyway, so the ruling comes in as we're on the air, and I have to pivot to what I was going to say to what was actually happening, and I stumbled. As a stutterer, I only stutter if I'm tired, nervous, or angry. Still. And I work really hard to avoid, to not be in that space. Therefore, I get my rest. I try and eat healthy. I exercise. And so I got nervous, and I started stuttering. And it got so bad, Doc.
And you were live.
Live on the air.
Yeah.
And this is, one of the biggest stories of the year, of historic significance. And I flub it. I'm so bad that the photographer, who's a friend of mine, he leans around his camera like, "Are you okay? You having a heart attack? What's going on?" It was so bad, and this is going downhill. I stopped speaking, and so Dan asked me a question. I didn't say anything.
Wow.
He says, "Well, we're obviously having technical problems," and he went back on the air. And I knew in that moment my career was over. Everything I'd worked for, my mom had prayed for, I just ruined it on this big story. So I go and I immediately thanked the crew, took my mic off, got in my rental car, and drove to my hotel.
Did you cry?
I did, because I knew not only was I had I known ruined my dreams, I had ruined the dreams that people had from my mother, the elders in my church, my brother and sister, my aunts and uncles. And so, I remember by the time I got back to the hotel, my mama called because she knew where I was staying. And she said, "Son, you okay?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "What the hell happened?" Because my mother always, she never sugarcoated things. Like you deal with the truth. So she had a very harsh conversation about my performance and how it didn't measure up. And I said, "Yep, we went through that." And I explained to her why. She says, "We don't make excuses. Like, okay, you didn't do your job well. It's okay." We prayed about it. And she said, "Okay, what are you going to do now?" I said, "I think I'm going to go to bed." It's like 8 o'clock at night. I went to bed, woke up the next day. And the next day I realized that the same God who had protected me, who had lifted me my entire life, I don't know where he was those 2 minutes I was on television, but he was still in my life, and I'd be okay. So my boss called me up and like, I've been trying to reach you since last night. What the hell?
Yeah.
And leaned into me pretty hard. He says, "What the hell happened?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Last night, what are you talking about?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
You couldn't remember?
No, I remembered.
Oh.
But I said, "I owned what happened yesterday, but you have my word it'll never happen again."
I see.
And then,
But it was uncontrollable.
oh, yeah.
I mean, you couldn't have prevented that from happening.
Doc, and this is sure, there's always more you can do. That's something that my mom taught me, that certainly you always give your best, but hopefully there's a recognition that whatever your best was on Monday, if you prepare, if you work, your best might be better on Tuesday. And so sure, I mean, I could have been better prepared. I could have had a conversation with a producer beforehand about what are the possibilities? How likely is it that a ruling will come in today? As opposed to, it's day 3, it's after 5 o'clock, they're not going to do anything today.
Yes. So when did you first realize that you were stuttering? How old were you?
Probably 7, 8, 9.
And how did you deal with peer group pressure or commentary or anything like that?
Silence. Wouldn't say anything. Words like stupid and slow followed me around, whispered, from adults in my life outside of my immediate family. And so I just kept quiet. And just prayed it would go away. Felt real shame about it because I felt like I must be stupid if I can't speak like everyone else. My family, my mother, brother, and sister, they would complete my sentences. They would have conversations for me, and it was difficult. And I think, it's part of the reason why I became a journalist, right? I know for you, with all of your wonderful work, that you believe that it's a calling. It's what God wanted you to do with your remarkable life. And so I feel the same way. So because of my early issues with literacy, with stuttering, I felt like, okay, fundamentally as a journalist, my job is to give voice to the voiceless. And I know what it means to be voiceless. And so hopefully I bring a level of empathy to my work because of my childhood experiences.
Byron, a lot of people think that journalism is skewed, unfair, sometimes prejudiced. Tell me, how is it that you make sure that you are not just factually accurate, but socially and emotionally and psychologically fair in your reporting?
I love you for so many reasons. That's such a great question because it's so true. Like, I think sometimes people in my business get caught up in, well, is it true? As you know, a lot of people have had their lives, professional lives, personal lives, ruined because either something was thought to be true, later not to be proven true, or there wasn't sort of full context given. Or we live in this sort of cancel culture now that someone has the worst day of their life and suddenly their entire lives are blown up. And certainly there are instances in which some things perhaps you should not be allowed to come back from professionally. But with that said, one of the things I figured out early in my career was there's a difference between facts and truth. And so as journalists, it's our job to seek facts and also truths. For instance, the fact is slavery was legal. The truth is it was morally wrong. And you know what I mean? And you have to spend time to do that. I think I want to believe I was raised right. I was raised to believe that no one's better than me, I'm no better than anyone else. That all of us are deserving of grace. And that, facts are facts. And it's my job as a journalist to pursue facts. Now, people have often asked me, people of faith have asked me, do I see some conflict between my profession and my faith walk? I said, no, not at all. I said, I believe as a Christian. And again, I'm Christian because my mom was from Apex, North Carolina, and she was Christian, my grandma was Christian, therefore I'm Christian. I would believe if I was born someplace else in the world, I might be Muslim, I might be Hindu, whatever. But I'm respectful of all faiths. So, as a Christian, my life is my pursuit and what Jesus wants, how he wants me to live my life. I believe as a journalist, it is a pursuit of truth, of sort of human truth. So, yeah, I think I just, I'm mindful. I try and gather as much information as I possibly can. I try and I treat people the way I want to be treated. And I used to, when I was younger, I wanted people to like me. Right? Who doesn't want to be liked?
Yes.
But now I accept the responsibility as a journalist. My job is to be respectful and to be respected.
Yeah.
And that I always say, my standard when I do a story is, no matter who it's on, that when the story airs, I can sit with them and their family on their couch in their house and we can watch together. And they may say, you suck, but it was honest, it was true. And that's my goal.
How much influence do you have over a script versus a writer, a researcher on the program?
Fortunately at Nightline, we're a very collaborative and family space. My co-anchor and I, Juju Chang, I'm a little older than Juju, but we have very similar spirits. Juju is Jewish. Her faith and her family mean everything to her. It kind of shapes how she lives her life. Anyway, and so we're at that stage of our lives where it's not about puffing ourselves up. It's about telling the best stories that we can. And we have a wonderful team of young, gifted producers. And so I'd say, like on any given story, the producers may actually, at this stage of my life, they may write 85% of the piece. And I'll come in, I add a little butter, a little spackle. But certainly I think when Juju does a piece, when I do a piece, it is reflective of our style, of how we approach things.
Is it true, and I don't mean to be cynical,
Sure.
just trying to learn from you, from your experience. Is it true that the big boss sometimes just says, do the story and do it this way?
That's not been my experience. Certainly you hear about that. It's like, I would think, the skepticism we all have of someone else's industry, of how things occur. Perhaps that occurs. That has never been my experience, where anyone said, you're gonna have to do it this way. Now certainly I'm mindful that leadership may guide. For instance, the great legendary Walter Cronkite. When Walter Cronkite was the anchor of the CBS 80 News, there were three major stories going on in America: the Civil Rights Movement, the war in Vietnam, and the space program. Walter Cronkite decided that the space program was where they would spend the bulk of their time, resource, and energy. Now they would cover the other two, but he decided that was their priority. So is that being biased? It's just making a decision.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at an evening news, you've got 5 or 6 stories in that day. 1,000 stories happen in the world.
Exactly right.
And somebody picked 5 or 6 stories. Let's go through a quick set of questions. Your hobbies?
Okay. Hobbies? Golf, reading.
You have spoken back at Ohio Wesleyan University?
I have. I have. I was on the board of trustees for a number of years. It's a school that helped shape me. As you know, I'm from Baltimore, and if you're from Baltimore, where I went to high school means everything. So I'm really connected to Archbishop Curley High School. Thanks for asking. It's an all-boys Catholic high school run by Franciscans. In fact, me and my brothers, we have this cross. It's for the Franciscans, a very modest cross. And that place really influenced my life, because when I got there as a 12-year-old boy, I was still learning how to read. My stutter was severe. I remember my freshman, Father Bartholomew, who's my freshman advisor, when we met, he says, Byron, you're looking at your transcripts right now, you're not going to college. He said, but where you are right now, but if you commit, we will get you there in 4 years. Again, my mother is, right, we're going to speak hard truth, but we're going to plan. And so that place actually influenced my life more than Ohio Wesleyan, a great place, grateful to have attended there. But my high school, Archbishop Hurley High School.
You've written a book. What was the book about?
So the first one was called Step Out on Nothing. It was a story about faith and family. You know, my own sort of background. You know, like you, I believe it's important that to encourage people whenever you can. I think, you know, as a journalist, I'm a paid critic, right? I go look at problems. But I am convinced that there are lots of wonderful places on planet Earth, but there's no place like the United States, that we are a unique and wonderful place. The opportunities that I've been given, the opportunities you've been given, your remarkable life. Right, this immigrant child who came to the U.S. with $50 in your pocket and now looked at all that you've built and all the lives you've touched. That's, as you and I both know, that's only possible in America. So as this paid skeptic who's lived a very blessed life, I thought it was an opportunity to tell the story about, it's mostly about my mom and about my mother, elders in my church, coaches, the people who poured into me to give me opportunity.
I watched you do an interview, to moderate an interview with a former Premier of Canada and a former Secretary of State of the United States. How did you prepare for something like that, and do you ever get nervous?
I don't necessarily get nervous anymore, but I get kind of hyped. I get excited about the opportunity to engage with people. I love, as I'm sure you do, I just love like the preparation. I love the research you have to do. So in that case, what I did was I went and had my research team find every book those two men had ever written. And then I said, find me 5 books written about them. And so in the weeks leading up to it, I read those 12 books. And then a series of articles to see, what their thing was. Then I went and looked at the beauty of YouTube. I went and looked at their public appearances because I want to understand their cadence.
Get their style.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. How do I approach this person? Like in the case of Secretary Baker, I didn't realize he has a really good sense of humor, that he likes a good laugh. And so I knew there would be an opportunity to position him. And I realized that these two men cared about each other. They've been friends for a long time. So I knew it was important to build that connection. And it's one of the things I admire about you, how well prepared you are when you conduct interviews, and this wonderful program that you have, and other settings that I've seen you in, is that I feel like as you ask questions, it's important that the person know that you respect them, that you value their time. And how do you show that? By being prepared, by knowing their story, right? Because you figure people who we get to talk to have been interviewed multiple times, more than likely, right? And they can be on autopilot. You get them off autopilot when you make clear to them that I care about you, I respect you, I've done the homework. And so I remember I went through the 2 biographies these men had written, and I found specific lines in their book, who knew, where they referenced the other. And that wasn't on page 3, right? That was like deep.
Yeah, that's brilliant, by
right,
the way.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so wanting to make them feel comfortable, I'm sure like you prepare in deciding you have a limited amount of time, here are the subject matters we want to touch upon. Some of the best advice I ever got from the late great Ed Bradley, who was a friend and mentor when I was at CBS. I asked Ed, what's the Keto Grade interview? And Ed said, not original to him, but he said, read, listen, listen, listen. And so I worked through that each time.
Yeah. When I look at your life, you've had an amazing life. You're still a young man. You've had challenges growing up. Your mom had an enormous impact on you. You played sports. You went to a fine institution. You've had a distinguished career as a journalist. What lies ahead for Byron Pitts?
That's great. I'm still trying to piece together what God wants me to do with my life. I enjoy my professional life. I have other business interests outside of television. I want to be a better servant leader. I want to find, because if you've been doing something for a while, you realize wow, okay, you have more experience. Like I've been a professional journalist for 40 years. And in fact, I've been working in television longer than most of my colleagues at Nightline have been alive. And just wanting to share that, you know, as you and I both know, so blessed to live in this great country, so blessed to work in the profession I live in. Troubled as it is, I still think journalism is fundamental to our great democracy. And our democracy is great. And journalism is a worthwhile pursuit. So I think dabbling in that, working with young people, I think a lot about building generational wealth. You know, one of the things that whenever I talk to dynamic leaders about yourself, and you talk about how they regiment their day, their diet, their things they do. But I also talk to dynamic leaders about like money, like how do they? Because you know, growing up poor, you know, you kind of live
Makes a difference.
right?
It affects where you go and how you
Exactly
live.
right. Exactly
And
right.
all of that. Well, Byron, you're an inspiration to so many. I've seen you with young people. I've seen you with leaders of America, and you always are the superstar. Thank you for being with me here side by side.
Thank you, my friend.
Funding for Side by Side with Nito Cobain is made possible by
Here's to those that rise and shine, to friendly faces doing more than their part, and to those who still enjoy the little things. You make it feel like home. Ashley Home Store. This is home.
The Bud Group is a company of everyday leaders making a difference by providing facility solutions through customized janitorial, landscape, and maintenance services.
Coca-Cola Consolidated is honored to make and serve 300 brands and flavors locally. Thanks to our teammates. We are Coca-Cola Consolidated, your local bottler.